From Alameda, California, the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network presents Flying High Over the Zone with the Zigzag Man.
I am back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zigzag Man, Alameda, California. It's Friday, and what is it, the 12th of October, 2018. And I've got a terrific show. I have interviews that I'm going to play for you that were recorded late last night with both Jerry Feitelberg and Al Clark. I'm really excited about that, and I want to just reminisce a little bit with you guys who were in it from the beginning when I started doing podcasting. The premise of my podcast was not so much sports, baseball in particular. What this whole thing has turned into over the years that I've been doing it, it's my passion. I love sports. I love baseball. And I tend to do a lot of shows with former players, coaches, executives, writers. I talk to a bunch of baseball people, and I love doing it. But getting back to the premise of the way the show was set up, it was my intention to make a difference in the communication world and whatever it is, getting the word out there. It was my intention to identify and really zing what I call the Un-Holy Trinity. And I've done that over the years, but not quite as much. And if you're wondering what the Unholy Trinity is, it's big business, government, and organized religion. All three combining to make our lives. When I say our lives, I'm generalizing. How about the working class people who are trying hard in life to make the best for their own families and their situation, and deal with jobs and deal with employers and deal with medical care and this, that, and the other thing? Well, I put it all together, and I realized that without the cooperation of those three entities, our lives wouldn't be, our middle-class existence wouldn't be defined as the working poor. Now, one by one, over the years, I've torn the institutions apart. I've torn the hierarchy of organized religion apart. I've torn the big business. I've gotten into them in the sense that I identify how we're being ripped off as a nation by businesses. But insurance companies, drug companies, banks, everything you can think of rips us off on a daily basis. And again, they couldn't do it alone. They couldn't do it alone. They need government to give them permission to do that, to take the controls off them, etc. So, and I've talked about politics and religion and all of it, but I don't do it enough. And a case came up earlier in the week where a good friend of mine was considering either keeping or turning in a whole life policy with X insurance company. I'm not going to name the insurance company. They're basically all the same. The rates don't vary very much. There's stock companies and mutual companies, but basically they sell you insurance, and if you die, they pay you. But along the way, you could be paying more for the insurance than you're considering, than you thought you should be. And this person comes to me and she says, I'm considering keeping and or getting rid of a policy that I have. It's a whole life policy. Can you explain what a whole life policy is? And I sat down with her and I took out a piece of paper and I made a little graph and I explained the following, basically. First of all, I gave her a little bit of a glossary of insurance terms. And the premium, I said, was what you pay on a yearly basis to keep your plan in place. Okay? Cash value is what the value of the policy is if you decide, say, to turn it in. You have a certain cash value. I explained the definition of a dividend. A dividend is not a dividend as the government knows it. Because if some company, if you earned a dividend in the traditional manner, you'd be taxed for that dollar. It's taxable. You earned it. Okay? A dividend, as far as insurance companies are concerned, they call it a dividend. But it is merely a return of overpriced premium. What you pay for the insurance, if you keep it a couple of 3 years, you earn a dividend each year. But the dividend is not a dividend. It's a return of premium. And the reason I can say that and mean it is because if it were a dividend in the traditional sense, you'd be taxed for it. So, you've got a policy that you buy that, let's call it a $100,000 policy. And let's assume that you're paying for it year after year and accumulating a cash value that is yours if you need it, either to pay premiums or to take in cash. But when you do that, they charge, the insurance company does, an interest on the money that you take out, that you borrow. You're borrowing from your own policy, and they charge you interest. And then when you pay it back, you continue to have that cash value when and if you pay it back. Okay? Now the interest is yearly. So if you take, say, $1,000 out in cash value and don't pay it back, they're going to tack the interest on, be it a small amount, 5-6%, whatever they're charging these days. For instance, it's built into your contract how much you pay if you borrow your own money. Now, for those following along, this doesn't seem like such a good deal. You're paying money. You're paying your money for premiums, and if you need your money, they charge you an interest to get your own money. That doesn't sound like such a good deal. But let me tell you what's the ultimate in bad deals and how life insurance clearly rips people off. You die. Your cash value dies with you. So, in essence, if you die in your 60s and you say on that $100,000 policy, you might have $65,000 of cash value accrued that you couldn't get to unless you borrowed it along the way. And if you died in the meantime while you borrowed that $65,000, the policy would only pay you $35,000. The $100,000 minus the amount that you borrowed. Okay? Now here's the kicker. If you left your money in there and didn't borrow it, didn't take it out, didn't use it, and you died, the company would pay you $100,000. But what happens to that $65,000 cash value? It dies along with you. So that, in essence, they paid you $100,000, but they only really paid you $35,000 because because the $100,000 that they paid you, they kept the $65,000 in cash value. Now that may seem a little confusing, and I haven't explained it as well as an insurance man who might come out to your house and tell you that to solve that problem of having a policy like that, and there are very few insurance agents that will tell you this. Why? Because they're paid on commission, and the premiums you'd be paying for this product are a whole hell of a lot less than you'd be paying for that whole life policy. So, what I want you to do, and provided you're insurable, don't turn in any policy before you get a new one, is go out there, get yourself, I told this woman, get yourself apply for a term policy and separate your savings from your insurance policy at all costs. Okay? Now, I'm not going to get into where you put your savings at this point, but I do want to say and I do want to make the consideration for what's good about a whole life policy. What's good about a whole life policy that you use for your savings program is the following. There's an option you can buy that increases the premiums a little bit, but may come in very handy. It's called a waiver of premium. Now, get this, waiver of premium if you're if you're disabled for 6 months or more, they will waive your premiums so your policy continues to serve you in the way that it was set up to do, and I put serve you in quotations because sometimes they're not really serving you when they sell your policy as best they can. They're serving themselves, whoever it is that sold it to you and explained it to you. So, if you have waiver of premium, you become disabled 6 months later, you're permanently disabled, they'll pay you until you're 65. They'll pay the premiums until you're 65. It's a very, very inexpensive rider that you put on your policy when you buy it, and it serves a lot of people who are into using insurance as their savings program. And it can't be disputed that the bank will not, if you're disabled, if you have a set savings program set aside, they will not continue to pay money into this. So you have to weigh that with basically buying the most expensive decreasing term insurance policy that they label whole life, as if it's going to be the same for your whole life. Okay? Now, get that. Here are the most important things. Oh, and another way, I'll give them credit, as I will the banks. For the last 100 years or so, they haven't gone under. None of them have, and they won't. So if you're into savings with the most security, in other words, you're getting low interest, they're keeping the money if you die, okay? but it's savings, and it's a savings program. They will guarantee the money to be there, what they promise. Unfortunately, what they promise is peanuts. But I had to make the case for the insurance company that there are two reasons that you may consider buying a whole life policy. One, that waiver of premium option. I think it's the best thing a whole life contract has going for it. And two, the absolute guarantee that come hell or high water, they may not pay all the dividends that they project, but we've talked about that. The dividends are just a return of premium anyway, a term of what they call unused premium. So they know in advance that they're paying a higher rate, and they'll return the unused premium, but they'll keep the interest that they accrued by having money in their coffers for as long as they can keep it. So my lesson for today, through my good friend who's considering keeping and maybe buying more of what she has in the way of whole life insurance, I thought this would serve as a way to educate more than just her, educate the people I care about, my listening audience, which has mostly sports fans, but there are folks that listen to interviews that I have going with politicians, with a whole bunch of people in the real world. And I wanted to get back, and I promised to do this on a regular basis to identifying the unholy Trinity, and thought I'd use this as a good tool to do it and explain the overpriced whole life insurance policy to y'all. And we'll do something about the two other legs of the horrible stool of the unholy Trinity, and that's organized religion and politics. We'll get to them on a regular basis on this show, I promise you, from now on. You're listening to me, Ralph Tyko, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I want you to stay tuned. I've got Jerry Feitelberg, followed by Al Clark, and that'll make for a great podcast for today. And I thank you for listening. If you'd like to do me kind of a solid and make what we do feel really good, I have a message for you, if you would, before I throw this to the interview with Jerry. And I would like you to box up some new or lightly used children's books and take them to the Head Start program in whatever community you live. It's imperative because we're going to be relying to keep this world going. We're going to be relying on the Ute of America, as Casey Stengel used to say. And we got to give them some reading material. We got to get people reading. Everybody is getting away from that wonderful experience of developing your imagination, for instance, becoming school ready, developing passions, all those things that come from reading. And when I mention getting kids school ready, the kids at the Head Start program need to be school ready more than any, and that's obvious. So getting books together, having neighborhood drives, doing what it takes, taking a box of books on a monthly basis, whatever it is, lightly used children's books to the Head Start program could help turn the world around eventually. Slowly, perhaps, your own little thing, our own little thing, making a small little difference. We're not going to change the world per se, but just doing a little something on behalf of all the offerings, not just mine. We've got like 2 shows a day, 2 offerings a day from the network. Check out the shows. You'll enjoy them, and do all those people a service. If you like any of the offerings, put the books together and take them over there. I am going to stop babbling and tell you that, thank God it's Friday. How about that? Ralph Tyko, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and here you go with Jerry Feitelberg. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Comfortably Zoned with me, the Zigzag Man from Alameda, California. And as is my wont, I get to talk to some of the most interesting people in the world. Today it's my fellow podcaster from the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, Jerry Feitelberg. How are you, sir?
I'm doing beautiful, and I'm here in Alameda today. It's a gorgeous day, about 70 degrees, sunny. Can't beat it. Best weather in the world.
Absolutely. You know, for 365 days, if you average it all out, it gets to be about 70, 71 maybe. And it's just, you're right, it's just absolutely gorgeous most of the time. We get a few hot days in the summer and a few really rainy days in the winter, but for the most part, it is spring and it is fall, and can't beat it with a stick.
No, it's wonderful. It really is. Yeah. We have a great economy. We have a governor who took over with a $26 billion deficit, and he's leaving office with a $16 billion surplus. How's that?
Well,
pretty good for 8 years.
It would be great, I would say, if the one thing that is our bane in Northern California, and it's the homelessness, and I know it goes on all over the country, but in San Francisco, in Oakland, it is just a horror show. So
now, are you talking about the Oakland A's lack of a stadium, or talking about all the people?
Well, that's a real horror. That's a real horror show. I was just talking about life. Nothing's a horror show like a baseball team in distress for a stadium.
Right.
And I'll tell you.
No, but it's a serious problem. Homelessness is a serious problem.
Of course.
And downtown San Francisco has become a nightmare, not only for tourists, but for people who live in the area. Areas of San Francisco, you can't walk the streets. There's debris on the streets. There's needles. There's fecal matter. It's just terrible. And there have been instances where conventions have pulled out of the city. And here we have this gorgeous city. We have a great economy, and yet we have homelessness. And it's just a tragedy.
You know, it's funny you mentioned conventions pulling out of the city. There's a strike going on amongst servers or waiters and whatever at the Hotel Marriott. And the Hotel Marriott is hosting a convention of cannabis folks from all over the country. So people are faced with a decision. You know, for the most part, people who are into weed, into cannabis, are very socially conscious. So these people are now faced with the dilemma, because they are thinking, and the world around them does affect them, as opposed to those out there who are boozed up and going to a Trump rally. But these folks are faced with going to their convention and crossing picket lines, which is something to think about. The world always gives you something to think about. It's never simple. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things about a cannabis convention, or even if they had a tobacco convention, you can't smoke in the hotels. There's no smoking inside buildings allowed in California. Can't smoke in the restaurants, so you have to go outside and light up. So now these people who are smoking dope are going out in the street and walking among people who are shooting up or pooping on the streets. And, it's not a pleasant scene, even though that the cannabis will knock out, the smell of the cannabis will kill any smell from the poop.
Absolutely will not. Believe me. All right, my friend, let's talk something we both enjoy talking about, because it's been a rough week of politics, and we talked about the nightmare possibility of Kavanaugh being confirmed, and he was confirmed. And then we talked about the nightmare possibility of, would something like this rejuvenate the Trump part of the Republican Party, and it absolutely has. So it has been such a nightmare on so many different levels that talking baseball is what it's about. I'm trying to do as much of that as I possibly can, because it makes me feel good. And speaking of dilemmas, you had a bit of a dilemma last week. You had your A's losing to the Yankees. And I was wondering what it really would have been hell for you if the A's beat the Yankees and they were involved with the Red Sox at this point.
Well, I think I told you
you're not getting paid. You're not getting paid by the A's, so your loyalty is your boyhood team. I understand that.
Oh yeah,
but
I would like to see as long as either team beat the Yankees, I was happy, and I was really pulling for the A's to do it. And then I had to make a decision whether I had to say either go with my heart or my head. But in this case, both my heart and head said the Red Sox would have won the playoffs with the A's, even though the A's had taken the season series 4-2. Remember earlier in the season, Manaea had thrown a no-hitter against them, but the A's pitching staff was in better shape. The A's played the Red Sox in April and May, before the pitching staff went into tatters. They were beat up by the playoffs. They didn't even have a guy that took it down on to start.
Twice the A's pitching staff was beat up this year. They rebuilt it and had more injuries on top of it. So let's take our hats off to the A's for giving us a terrific team to root for. For me, it was kind of mixed emotion when they played the Yankees, because I'm a Met fan, but I'm a New Yorker at heart, and so I just watched the game and enjoyed it.
Oh, absolutely. Even though the A's lost, I think it was 7-2 was the final, 6-2, 7-2. They got there. They won 97 games. This was a team that no one predicted that would finish above. Most pundits picked them to finish in the cellar, in the basement of the AL West.
Right.
Every
to
team
be at 500.
It would have been a miracle. No one even picked it. They won 75 games last year. To get to 81 wasn't that difficult. They could have won, go 81. That would have been a reasonable expectation. And I think I told you earlier in the season, I picked them to win 82 and lose 80. And you thought I was an optimist.
I thought you were Pollyanna, for crying out loud.
Yeah. And I liked what they did with the team last year when they brought up the Olsen and Chapman. And this year, they brought up a couple guys that were absolutely terrific in the outfield. Nick Martini, hitting left-handed and leading off. And he had about 280, and that's what you want a leadoff guy to do. And he had speed, and he wasn't bad defensively. And late in the season, they brought up this young man from the Dominican, Laureano, and he was sensational. Great defensively, tremendous arm, had some pop in his bat. I think he finished the season with 5 home runs in limited at-bats and hit about 280.
Yeah.
Did everything you could want for a center fielder.
And to go with Piscotti, who they got earlier from St. Louis, and you got Simeon coming along at shortstop.
Yeah.
He steadily got better for the last 2 years. He started out as if you look at him in the field, he got better. He much more steady, and certainly at bat, you pulled a great year out of Lowry. Like I say, defensively, third and first were as good a combination. Chapman's bit of a scatter arm notwithstanding, but as good of a combination in the field as I can imagine, as I can imagine being in the league. I don't see as much of the league as I do the A's, but they're terrific. Your guy LaCroix at catcher, you were happy when they got him. Really kept the pitching staff together, and he is as good a defensive catcher. He reminds me of Jerry Kendall defensively, just like a third baseman. Quick reflexes, really a pleasure to watch. So it was a fun team all around. The pitching staff was put together by a genius who had to keep filling parts and pieces as it went along. And I really enjoy how versatile they got towards the end when they were picking up on the Tampa idea of starting a relief pitcher and, going that first time around the batting order type thing. So,
sure.
I enjoyed the year immensely. You're still enjoying it with your Red Sox, and that's a good thing.
It is a good thing, and we have to look to the off season and see what the A's are going to do in the off season. In my mind, they have to do a couple things. They got to sign LaCroix, give him a 2-year or 3-year deal. He was making, I think, $6 million this year. Bump him up to $10 million. They had the second lowest payroll, or one of the lowest payrolls in all of baseball, and they put more fannies in the stadium. And if they have a good team, they're going to put more people in next year. That's the way it goes. So sign LaCroix for a 2 or 3 year deal, bump him up to $10 million a year to make sure give him incentives to play here in Oakland. They got to do something. Lowry, I wouldn't let Lowry go. I think he will play for a fairly reasonable amount of money because of his age, and he's probably got another 2 good years left in him. His last 2 years have been terrific, and as long as he can stay healthy, he was good defensively. He only made about 3 or 4 errors during the season. And you brought up Semien, and if you remember when Semien came over from the White Sox in the 2015 season, he made 35 errors, and most of them were throwing errors. And his footwork wasn't very good. And later that year, the A's rehired Ron Washington. Ron had been the manager of the Texas Rangers, took the Rangers to 2 World Series.
And before that, he was an infield coach before that, and helped Chavez, who was a pretty darn good third baseman, win 6 Gold Gloves. And anybody who watches Chapman today doesn't even think of Chavez anymore. I mean, he is so much quicker than anyone I've seen in a long time at third base. I know there's a kid in Colorado who was a teammate of his.
Yeah,
Arenado.
They went to the same high school.
Right, and he's pretty damn good too. But once Chapman gets that a little bit of an erratic arm under control, you're going to see a Gold Glover for the next 10, 12 years. He's really good.
And Semien, as we were talking about Semien, he worked with Ron Washington, And Washington spent hours with him on both on fielding and his footwork on throwing and where his arm slot should be when he makes the throw. And so those are the improvements that he made. And so that they had strength up the middle, catching, center field, shortstop, and second base. And while the starting pitching was beat up, they got some performances out of Mike Byers, Edwin Jackson. Cahill was good at the Coliseum, terrible on the road. And Brett Anderson was hit or miss. Sometimes he was good, sometimes he wasn't. Those two guys,
Mig didn't get hurt as well.
People.
Think of all the guys that got hurt. Graveman got hurt early on.
Yeah.
Mig didn't get hurt. Minaya got hurt.
Right.
2 or 3 others. Cahill and Anderson were hurt over the course of the year.
Right.
And
Triggs and Blackburn on 60 days.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Minaya was four guys had Tommy John surgery. Minaya had shoulder surgery. He's out for the entire 2019 season. The A's will get back some of the pitchers. Now they're talking the Tommy John surgery is 12 to 18 months in recovery. And the longer they go in the recovery, the better they're going to pitch. So some of these guys that went out in spring training will be able, 15 months will be around the 1st of July next year, they'll be able to come back. And we'll see what happens. But Billy Beane and David Forst have got to go out, either make a deal, some sort of deal if they have some assets to trade to get some starting pitching, or go to the free agent market, see who's available in free agency. I think that the
I hate to see, you always like to see a team develop pitching, because going to the free agent market and pitching for pitching has been historically been a real high odds type thing.
Oh yeah, I mean I remember when the Dodgers signed Kevin Brown to a $105 million contract, and he didn't perform.
Right.
And some guys, the Red Sox are paying the price with David Price. They signed him to a $230 million contract, and he can't perform in big games. So
he never was able to beat the Yankees with consistency.
Never, he couldn't beat them.
Yeah.
And the only loss the Red Sox had was the game that he started. Maybe he'll be okay against Houston. We don't know. It remains to be seen. But the A's got, the Red Sox got great performances from Chris Sale, Rick Porcello, Nathan Eovaldi, but Price, no. So, but he could be a reliever. Remember Barry Zito with the Giants in 2012. He saved the Giants' bacon that year.
Absolutely.
So you never know. You never know.
It was nice to see with Zito, because he was the one guy who would sign autographs for kids in the 90s. And my kid grew up in the 90s, and we'd go out there, and he would always be, he'd spend an hour before games at the railing. Just, he'd make sure every kid got an autograph. And, sometimes good vibes come back at you. Zito was really struggling. He signed a long-term contract with the Giants. It didn't go well at all, but at least he ended with the year that you refer to, when he comes back in the bullpen. So baseball's a strange game. A lot of it is vibes, I'm beginning to think. And Zito put out some good ones. He's a very interesting guy, very bright, talented guy, a musician, self-made. I really liked him.
Yeah, he is. He is exactly what you say, and I saw him too down in spring training when he was with the A's. This was before the start of the 2005 season. Everybody and anybody, he wouldn't turn anybody away. And he wanted his autograph. They kept coming. And some guys are saying, "What's he doing? Why is he doing this? He's making us look bad." But he did it, and that's a good thing. And because when you do that and you give a kid a baseball and he has an autograph, I think he becomes a fan for life. That's when the deal is made.
Absolutely.
The contact is made.
And it doesn't even have to be an autograph. It could just be a look, a contact, where your hero looks down at you with some sort of recognition. And sometimes these guys who sign autographs don't even look up, like at card shows and what have you. They'll keep signing, not looking up. But it's the player that looks at you, that makes eye contact. It's great, and we have to. Everybody's got to pass the game on to the kids. And with that in mind, I give Major League Baseball a lot of credit. They're doing some stuff. They have the RBI program going, and you see more and more of teams interacting, fan days, and what have you. So baseball's trying. Let's put it that way.
Well, I'm going to give you a little baseball history. Test your memory.
Okay.
When I was a kid, I remember I went to Fenway Park, and after the game, my buddy and I we were waiting for the players to come out, and a guy came by and we asked him for his autograph, and it was a member of the Detroit Tigers who played the Red Sox that day. I don't remember who won the game, but I asked the guy for his autograph, and he signed it. And it was a pitcher by the name of Sid Hudson. You remember him?
Sid Hudson was a New York Giant for a while, if I'm not mistaken.
There you go.
Yeah. And he was the guy who signed your autograph.
He was the guy that signed my autograph. And I saw the great Virgil Trucks pitch for the Tigers. I don't know if I saw Art Hardiman, and I have seen him. Hal Newhouse, I don't know. I don't remember if I saw him pitch. I may have. But
they had a terrific pitching staff. Those were the years of Boone at third base, who is the patriarch, the grandfather of Aaron Boone, and what have you. And the catcher Boone, Bob Boone, caught for like 20 years.
I was his father.
In the big league. Yeah, and Aaron had a brother as well. So the early years of Harvey Keene playing shortstop with that Detroit team, and K-Line coming up, he was like 17, 18 years old, never played a day in the minor leagues. And
right.
Yeah. Good days.
Yeah,
later on with Detroit, there was Wawa. Charlie Maxwell came from Wawa, Michigan, and they named him
Wawa. Charlie Maxwell.
Yeah, he was a great pinch hitter in his day. And then came...
Didn't Norm Cash play for them?
Norm Cash did. Poor guy drowned died early. Norm Cash.
Don't remember. But you know what's interesting, and over the years when I was doing Alameda TV, and then when I was writing for Sports Radio Service, where I sit in the press box, we're real close to the visitors' TV booth, and I saw Al Kaline working with the great Ernie Harwell. How is that for combination?
Wow, nice day. You've got some wonderful pictures posted of you meeting a lot of these guys up in the press box.
Yep.
Great
experiences. Great
experiences is right. I really envy the life you lead.
One of my favorite broadcasters is an Angels broadcaster by the name of Mark Kubica, the pitcher. He's about 6'5", 6'6", big, tall guy. Lefty, pitched for the Kansas City Royals.
Absolutely.
And he was in the broadcast booth, and I had the good opportunity of meeting Mike Scioscia a year or so ago down in the Angels dugout. And I just, he just left the job after 19 years with the Angels. But I think we have a mutual friend, Barry Bloom. Barry writes for Forbes magazine now, and Barry did a whole column on Mike Scioscia, and I commented that Mike will not be on him.
That was a touching column. I disagree. I think I mentioned this to you earlier. I disagree that Mike Scioscia will probably not get hired again.
Well, it might be too expensive.
For that, and the game is becoming a general manager game. And it was funny when Scioscia was doing so well with the A's. Art Howe was doing better with the Angels. Art Howe was doing better with the A's, and Sandy was getting all the publicity. In L.A., when they won, Scioscia got all the publicity. Well, it has partly because of Billy Beane and Billy Ball and what have you. The value of a manager has increased if he's the kind of guy who could push buttons, analytical buttons, and take more advice from the general manager and not make waves. And I think Scioscia's his own man, and the money notwithstanding, which that's pretty important, is going to contribute to him taking a job as some owner's advisor, consultant, this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
No pressure.
Tony La Russa. Tony's
right.
He's doing that with the Red Sox this year.
Absolutely, and he did that with Arizona for a while too.
Sure.
So.
Well, you brought up an interesting point, and there've been rumors floating around that the lineups that Bob Melvin puts out during the year were sent down to him from the up above, and that which you find hard to believe because you'd think that Melvin would be a veteran baseball man, would have the ability to make up the lineups himself, but they're saying no, these decisions are being made up above and they're being sent down to him, and he's got to put out the team on the field that they deem the best. They go through the analytics and they have all the charts. But at the same time, let's go back to Game 3 of the Yankee-Red Sox series when Alex Cora, with Severino pitching, he sent out Brock Holt, Rafael Devers, and Christian Vasquez. Okay, and Holt was 1 for 12 against Severino, and you're saying, why would you do that? The analytics would say don't play Holt. And all Holt did that night was hit for the cycle. First time it's ever been done in the playoffs. So, and Devers and I think Vasquez couldn't touch Severino, but on the game that the Red Sox won 16-1, everybody was hitting Severino. So, so much for analytics. Sometimes you got to go with your gut.
You go with your gut because maybe the player looked you in the eye before the game and said, I'm just not feeling it, coach. That kind of thing.
Yeah, could be.
And maybe the manager looked the player in the eye and knew he wasn't feeling it. That kind of thing. The hunches brings us back in our memory banks to Casey Stengel. And some of the moves that he made were absolutely pointless, in fact, but they certainly worked out. So a lot of hunch.
Yeah, how can you argue with 10 pennants in 12 years?
No question about that. But he did make the mistake that he would never made for the rest of his life. He never made the mistake again of turning 70.
Yeah, right.
That's what they said. That's what he said when they discharged him, in his words, of managerial responsibility. And he said, I'll never make that mistake again. It was after the 1960 beating by the Pirates in the World Series.
Yeah.
And he did, Casey, make several key errors in that series that might have cost
That was a strange series where the Yankees outscored the Pirates something like 2-1. They won games 12 and 14-2, 12-2.
Right.
And they just pounded it. And yet it went to Game 7, and the Pirates won in the Mazeroski's walk-off. But even more than that was Hal Smith's home run that tied the game.
I was
Hal Smith
just
doesn't
going to
hit the
say
home
that.
run.
Great memory about that. There were two Hal Smiths catching in the National League at the time. And the Hal Smith that hit the home run tied the game, enabling Mazeroski to win it later on. I remember that like it was yesterday. I don't remember where my keys are, but I do remember that.
And history repeated itself in the 1975 World Series when Carlton Fisk hit the home run to beat the Reds in the 12th inning. But had it not been for Bernie Carbo's home run to tie the game, he wouldn't have had the opportunity. And those are the unsung heroes. Mazeroski and Carlton Fisk are both in the Hall of Fame, and Carbo and Hal Smith were just ordinary players. But that was their moment of fame.
Reminds me, too, of batters like Dusty Rose coming up big in the World Series.
Yeah. 1954 series.
And in 1961, I think it was Bobby Richardson in that year who came up big.
Yeah.
So it's never the players you expect, and that's what baseball is all about, the unexpected. And
sure. And here locally, we had Cody Ross in 2010 with the Giants, and 2 years later, Marco Scutaro, who had played for the A's and bounced around, played for Toronto. Red Sox came to the Giants, and he came up big in the playoffs with the Giants.
After being hurt for much of that season, and really up until the playoffs, was a real major disappointment, was Scutaro.
Sure, and also in the 2010 series, Edgar Renteria came up big, and I think he was MVP of the World Series.
Absolutely. It's a great game we got going here.
Great memories.
Great memories. Hey, Jerry, thank you for joining me. It's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
I got Al Clark coming up, former Major League umpire, in the second segment, so stick around, everybody. It's the comfortably...
Well, when you talk to Al, I don't think he's going to remember. But my one incident with him was I was trying to get his prescription card so that I could process the payment for his medicine, and he gave me a hard time.
Oh,
throw me out of the park.
Anybody who I will admonish that man post haste.
Tell him you gave me too hard a time. But don't tell him.
So you know what the motto is in baseball, uncomfortably zoned? Don't give Jerry a hard time. How about that? Keep it nice and simple.
Hi, Zeke.
Hey, Al Clark, Major League Baseball umpire, retired, and my buddy. How you doing?
Yes, indeed. I am doing outstanding. Getting ready for a little bit of the remnants of Michael here in beautiful Colonial Williamsburg.
Oh, whoa. How close are you to being in harm's way?
Well, we're going to get a lot of rain tonight and a little bit of wind, but nothing like the Panhandle and in Georgia over the last couple of days.
Oh, that's been terrible. Absolutely.
Yeah, tough stuff.
I'm watching CNN, and it makes you cry every 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You see communities destroyed and personal property. Now they're starting a death toll and how many people.
Yeah, tough stuff.
Yeah, really tough. But as usual, the way I block out the world is through my love of baseball. And I could always go back, memories, looking towards the future, what's going on now. Al, we've talked a lot of memories in the past when you've been on. Let's keep it in the present. It's playoff baseball time, and I'd just like to know what it's like, what the playoffs have been like for you, looking from the eyes of an umpire. As you're retired, but you never really retired from being an arbitrator. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think that's kind of fairly well said. Baseball is in my DNA, right, and umpiring is in my blood. And when I look at games, I look at the game a little differently than a fan, actually a lot differently from a fan. I look at it definitely from an ump's eye view. And with that comes, I don't second guess managers or players or coaches. I don't criticize players unless they make errors of commission, not omission. And, guys in the big leagues, they're supposed to make plays. Mm-hmm. Umpires are supposed to get things correct. Sometimes they don't, which only proves that they're human. But from an ump's eye view, first of all, let me tell you this, Zeke, that umpires, number one, absolutely don't care who wins and who loses. We care about getting things as correct and right as we possibly can. With the invent of instant replay, I think it's got some very, very good points and a couple of bad points. I think on the negative side, it's taken the personality out of the umpires on the field because it's kind of like Big Brother is watching. Mm-hmm. And, the days of the Dutch Rennerts and the Ron Lucianos and a whole lot of the old umpires that performed with a tremendous amount of personality on the field, I think that's all gone. Never to be seen again because of technology. Well, on the other hand, our job is to try and get as many plays and situations correct as we possibly can. And, of course, instant replay will help that happen. Gone also are the nose-to-nose arguments that fans love. Fans love them, and actually the umpires love them, and the players and coaches and managers love them also.
Absolutely.
It was part of the game.
It was part of the game, and it was a little flair that was entertainment, if nothing else. And it gave the manager a chance to blow off steam, and to be honest, it probably gave the umpire a chance to blow off steam. Because
in a way,
yeah, you guys would sit and listen from the bench and can't respond basically until it gets to a certain point. But you must have welcomed that boiling point at times.
Well, there different things happen at different levels and with different personalities out on the field. One cannot make a blanket statement as to how one will handle an argument. Certainly, arguments are handled differently by umpires, or were handled differently by umpires when it involved a Tom Kelly, the very classy manager of the Minnesota Twins, and an Earl Weaver, or a Billy Martin, or a Dick Williams, or a Tommy Lasorda. These guys were verbose, over the top, not fair, and they're not going to be handled with the same decorum that Tom Kelly or Johnny Oates are going to be handled. And
they come out for a conversation, whereas Lasorda and the like would come out for a confrontation.
That's exactly right. And those guys who came out, they showed a little lack of respect for the game we all love and the people who run it. Mm-hmm. On the field, and who uphold the integrity. Umpires are charged with upholding the integrity of the game. That's why I can honestly say I didn't care who won and who lost. I cared about being right. And let's take it into the postseason now, and every postseason, it's just an extension of the regular season. The guys who are chosen for the postseason, and Major League Baseball does it in a very intelligent way. What they try to do is have two young guys, two middle guys, and two senior guys on the field, whatever rung of playoffs, is being contested at the same time. That way there's always a flow of young, middle, and senior guys.
That is a great idea.
Well, it's been employed by Major League Baseball for years and years and years. It's something that the talking heads, the announcers, know nothing about. I sat and listened to baseball announcers or these talking heads. When they started talking about umpires or game situations, they have no idea what they're talking about, and primarily they make themselves sound like fools. Absolute fools.
You've said
when
that
they're
before.
Talking about,
give me an example of that.
Well, I don't want to denigrate any names.
Not the names, but an example of what their lack of knowledge means.
Well, they have no idea of what goes on in an umpire's mind when he's calling balls and strikes, where good pitchers are concerned and pitchers that are not throwing to the strike zone are concerned. It's not as black and white as that box wants to make it look like. Not even close. And that box, of course, is so silly, it's ridiculous to even think about that that's got any merit at all if you know anything about the game or the way the game is played. Right. The positioning. They talk about positioning. The talking heads talk about positioning. My God, they've got no clue as to what the hell's going on the field, where the ball's coming from, how the runner is approaching the base, where the tag is applied. These guys never talk about those things that umpires are aware of all the time. No exceptions.
Okay.
And they don't ever tell the fan why an umpire did something or how they try to, but they're so far off base. It's silly. It's ridiculous.
Okay, now explain the expanding strike zone for the great pitchers like a Maddox and what have you. Or is
the strike zone is not expanded. It's created or helped to be created by the consistency of the pitcher. If the pitcher is throwing the ball consistently an inch and a half outside, well, an umpire is a human being, and sooner or later, that pitch is going to look pretty damn good. It's a hittable pitch. Therefore, the umpire is going to see it, and he's going to start calling it a strike. Now, how did that happen? The consistency of the pitcher. The pitcher helps create the strike zone with his consistency.
Okay.
Now, if you get a pitcher that's high and low and in and out, well, you're not going to see an umpire expand any kind of strike zone with that pitcher. And all the hitters know that too. And that's a good thing because the hitters know that if a pitcher take the ultimate guy, the Maddox or all the Braves, from that era, take the Ron Guidrys, take this kid from Snell from Tampa Bay this year. I mean, he's a little lefty didn't overpower the ball, but he was just a perfectionist when it came to control.
Right.
And those kinds of things play a big part in how umpires call balls and strikes.
I can cite the relief pitcher of the A's who doesn't have the overpowering stuff, Blake Triernan, but he is on that strike zone, on that corner all the time, and he gets those close pitches because of his consistency.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
That proves the point that I'm making. I unfortunately don't get to see the Oakland telecasts very much. Excuse me, but it doesn't make any difference. Left coast, right coast, north or south, the umpires are all over the country, and if the pitching coaches are doing a good job with their pitchers, with their staffs, they're above all else teaching pitchers to throw consistent strikes. And that helps themselves, that helps the whole ballgame.
Not balk and be able to keep the runner on base and keep him from getting to second. holding him on, giving the catcher a chance. It's all those things.
Well, yeah, of course it is. I love when I love it. I'm saying that sarcastically with a lot of snark. When telecasters and broadcasters talk about how catchers frame pitches. Well, whatever the catcher does has nothing to do with the way big league umpires and minor league umpires call balls and strikes. They don't
where it
look
went
at
over the
catcher.
plate. It's where it went over the plate, not where the catcher catches.
That's right. That's right.
But could a lazy and when I say that, I put it in quotes, lazy. We're all lazy, and you go about the course of a work day. Could an umpire be lulled into having that catcher be the point of where the call is made? Does it take more concentration to follow the ball over the plate than to get the umpire's framing?
The umpire does not pay attention to where the catcher catches the ball.
Okay.
It's that simple. I don't watch where the catcher catches the ball. I watch where the ball enters into and passes through the strike zone. By the time it gets to the catcher, the catcher's got no bearing on it.
And your decision is made in your head. Ball strike.
That's exactly right. I track the pitch. Umpires will track a pitch. They don't wait for the catcher to see how the catcher catches the ball. That's the most ridiculous thing in the world. Okay. And people who talk about that really have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to talking about umpiring.
I'm just wondering if some umpires, not you certainly, and not the great ones, or the really good ones, but if some umpires have been lulled to sleep, as it were, and do take the framing of the pitch.
Zeke, those umpires don't get to the big leagues.
Okay, that's a great answer. Absolutely.
Well, it's the truth.
Yeah,
it's the truth.
Okay, I'm going to ask a sensitive question.
Sure.
In all these recall, instant replays, or whatever you want to call them, contested calls, there's a high percentage of calls that go against the umps.
Yeah, and I don't know why that's happening right now. I think some of it, that's not sensitive. I mean, that's just a fact, in what's going on in the last couple of days. I don't know why that's occurred. I know that, and of course you're talking about Angel Hernandez. I know that Angel has got a bad reputation, but having worked with him, I know that he is a good umpire and he's very, very conscientious. And I know that he's a good umpire, as is evidenced by the pride that he had in himself. The next day he worked behind home plate after missing those 3 plays or having the plays overturned. Mm-hmm. And according to StatCast or whatever it is that tracks those things, he was correct at 98% of all the pitches that were called in that subsequent 4th game. So, I don't know. I certainly can't answer the question of why a guy misses a play.
Let me ask you this. Is those statistics that you just mentioned correct, 98%, is that using the square?
No, I hope not. Okay. I hope not. I think that square is terrible. I hope it's using a laser type situation. And even that I don't understand, because the strike zone is a fluid, it's a fluid entity. It moves with every hitter. The size of the strike zone changes according to the height of the hitter.
Right.
And I just don't get how the electronics of a box can be used for something that is as fluid as a strike zone, because, I mean, It just doesn't make sense to me. Maybe I'm just old school and don't get it.
No, you're talking about a flow of the game. It's not that you don't get it. It's that unless you've been in that flow of the game, it's very hard for the fan or an outsider to appreciate that, what you're saying. It's like...
And it becomes even more difficult to understand it when you're getting fed knowledge, or you're being fed words by announcers that, once again, don't know what they're talking about when it comes to umpiring,
right,
and how situations are handled. I mean, what does a guy who probably doesn't know how to put on a jock know how to, what goes on in the Major League field and a Major League fielder's umpire's mind on a daily basis? Now, I will give some players a little latitude there because they have been out there. They know what umpires are thinking, at least guys that have been around for a while. I mean, I'll listen to Al Leiter on the MLB network, and he was a pretty intelligent guy. Harold Reynolds is another guy who has got a real good handle. Billy Ripken.
Billy Ripken is really terrific. Oh my God!
Well, he's got a good handle on things. He grew up, learning the trades of the game and how to play it. Now, he doesn't know a whole lot about umpiring, but he talks about the game in an intelligent way, not a fan's way, but a way that a player would think about it. And if I'm a fan, I'll like to listen to that, and I know I'm getting a pretty solid truth.
Right. He's got a good one. Al, let me ask you about the relationship between a catcher and an umpire back there. And when the catcher comes up to bat, the calling of the pitches, the conversation between the umpire and the catcher, what's that like in a typical game?
Well, first of all, Zeke, you got to understand that umpires, once again, don't care who the hitters are. We could care less. Our job is to get as many pitches correct as we can. Doesn't make any difference if it's the catcher, the left fielder, the shortstop. It doesn't make any difference. Plus the fact we're only circumventally thinking about, who's at bat or that kind of thing. Our attention is focused on that pitch and the next pitch. Now, where the relationship comes about, sure, a catcher and an umpire, it's a whole lot easier to work a game if there is no contentiousness between the two.
Right.
But there have been many times where catchers and umpires don't agree. I mean, most catchers that caught for Earl Weaver or Billy Martin or Dick Williams or Frank Robinson, on any close pitch, they wanted it for themselves, for their pitcher, because there was pressure put on them by the manager. Now, I mean, I've had catchers tell me that, hey, listen, I got a bitch about that pitch because, if I don't, I'm going to get, I'm going to,
right.
I'm going to have, he's going to have, that manager's going to be up my butt.
Right. Do you want Frank Robinson staring down at you?
Well, for me, I don't care because by virtue of the uniform I wear, I'm going to be there in 9 innings. He doesn't have to be.
I meant from that young catcher's standpoint.
Sure, absolutely, totally. So of course he's going to be a little contentious, and I understand that as a veteran umpire. I've got to take that into consideration also, and I do. That's all part of what I'm talking about. Where what goes on down on the field where an umpire is handling a situation, those announcers have no clue as to what's going on any given day, in any given situation.
Okay.
That's a perfect example of them not knowing in that particular game, in that particular situation, what's going on between the umpire and the catcher. But yet they will comment about it as if they are the last word, when in fact they just don't know.
Okay. What's the strangest question you were ever asked by a professional commentator to back up what you're saying. In other words...
Oh, gosh, I don't know.
Are there times they show their ignorance to you more than others, or?
Well, you got to understand that most writers and broadcasters or telecasters, they've got some bias either for the club they're working for, or their network is covering a different club or club, and they're going to have advertising dollars if this club wins or if that club wins. So they're going to slant things. Seldom do writers come down and want to find out the truth about what happened on a particular play or a situation or an interpretation. They would rather go to the player or the club that was involved and get their point of view because they're writing and talking to that fan base. If you really want to know what happened, go to the arbitrator. Go to the guy who ruled on it. But seldom does that happen. Right. I mean, we'll turn it around. Zeke, when was the last time you heard from an umpire in a tough situation when it didn't make any difference if he was out or safe, fair or foul, but he just wanted to know what happened?
Yeah, you would think that a reporter would be curious enough to cover that. Were there any reporters that were good about coming to umpires, you in particular?
Oh, sure. And they were all over the country. A guy like Jerry Fraley, a guy like John Lowe in Detroit, Jerry Fraley in Dallas, Joe Donnelly in New York. There were a number of guys who would once in a while, but the majority of guys certainly would not.
I'm glad you could put names to that and give those guys credit because they...
Jerome Holtzman, the Hall of Fame writer out of Chicago. I mean, he all the time talked to the umpires about what happened. And the Chicago Sun-Time readers would have the benefit of, him being unbiased and telling exactly and actually what happened. And like I say, there are guys around the country who would do that. Bob Ryan would do that in Boston all the time. Dan Shaughnessy, most of the time, would do that. Bob Elliott in Toronto, he was very good at doing that. But most of the guys would not.
Very interesting. Very interesting. How about official scorers? Would you talk to them and consult with
Not
them?
at all. Not at all.
Okay.
That's not even on our radar. I could care less what they did.
Okay. Would they come to you occasionally with questions?
Zeke, very, very seldom. Because once again, that's number one. That wouldn't be an umpire's job. Number two, I don't care who does well and who doesn't do well. I mean, I might laugh at some of the things. Official scores can be biased also. To give the home team guy a hit instead of the visiting team guy an error, because that might be 5 points on a guy's batting average, and that writer's got to go down and into the clubhouse and talk to that guy.
Well, I can tell you one official scorer that has scored many, many, many games in the Bay Area, Michael Duca, a fellow podcaster on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. That would have never been an issue with him in any game played, just as your bias wouldn't be affected from your standpoint.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's the way it should be.
So, absolutely. So I wanted to make note of Michael, who's a regular on the Giant broadcast.
For whom did he officiate? For whom did he official score for?
He still does, mostly for the Giants and a lot for the A's here in Northern California. Michael.
Well, that's great.
Yeah. Hey, Al, as usual, talking to you is a thrill. I love it. Let's keep doing it, and we'll get back to you and as soon as we can. How about that?
Very good, Zeke. It's good talking to you always, pal.
Thank you, Al Clark. AL, when you see a AL on the cap, you don't see it anymore because it's one big umpire. It used to be AL and NL. It wasn't for American League. It was for Al Clark.
Yeah, that's right.
Shalom, my friend. Be well.
Very good, pal.
All right.
Talk to
Adios,
you later.
everybody. I'll be back soon. Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, Ralph Zig Tyko, talking to the most interesting people on the face of the earth. Bye.
This has been a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.